Hey guys, welcome to the Crypto Crunch, your one-stop shop for everything crypto. I'm your host Puneet Rastogi, and today we'll be discussing a little about one of the most loved, at the same time one of the most hated coin in cryptocurrencies, which is the Ripple or the XRP coin. The segment that we are in today is called Block Sense, and this is one segment where we discuss certain videos which are timeless videos, which will either do fundamental analysis of coins or fundamental analysis of some technologies or some projects which you need to know before you plan to invest in any of these coins or technologies, right? So today let's discuss about Ripple or the XRP. Before we start with the analysis, you need to understand that this is not a financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, and you would have to do your own due diligence. You'll have to do your own investigation before you plan to invest in these currencies or in these technologies altogether. You would also need to know that I am one of the early investors in XRP token. I did my first purchase at roughly 11 cents. I subsequently have bought it at 20 cents, 25 cents, and very recently I did buy it at 80 cents as well. My rough average price that comes for XRP is close to 20 cents. So my opinions can be biased. I am not trying to speculate or do any kind of speculative predictions or any attempt to spike the price. At the same time, I'm not paid by XRP or the Ripple organization. So let's begin. So firstly, what we need to understand is what is Ripple and is Ripple different from the XRP token? Well, the answer is yes, it is. So Ripple is a company which uses a digital asset for its operation, which is called the XRP token, right? Now, Ripple itself classifies or categorize itself as a company which is a payment company. It does not say that it's a blockchain company or a cryptocurrency company. It basically classifies itself as a payment company. What does the company do? The company basically provides solutions and softwares for the banks. They're focused on the cross-border payments, the real-time settlement, and the liquidity problem that the banks face day in, day out, right? As I said, XRP is a digital token which is basically used by Ripple and help the banks to solve the problems that we just discussed. Subsequently, I will be giving you real life examples when we come to that point, right? Uh, Now, Ripple as an organization holds 61% of the XRP, right? 100 billion tokens, XRP tokens, were initially created. These tokens are burned at a rate of, on an average, 3 tokens per minute, if I'm not wrong. That's whenever a transaction takes place, the XRP tokens are burned. Out of the 100 billion XRP tokens, 61% or close to 61 billion today are held by the Ripple organization. Uh, Now, what is XRP? XRP is a digital asset used by the company Ripple, right? Ripple has an Ripple consensus ledger, or the XRP ledger as it is called, which was initially created in 2012 and it was centralized and controlled by Ripple. The power or the scalability was the first priority that the XRP went towards, security was the second, and decentralization was the third. This is one fact or one point where Ripple is criticized a lot. People call Ripple centralized because the control is with the Ripple organization, and that is, I wouldn't say that's completely false, but that is a misleading statement. I'll come to that. Now, first thing, the scalability, which was the first priority that the Ripple company or the XRP tokens were based on, basically proves that Ripple can function at a speed of around 1,500 transactions per second, and it has a theoretically it can be scaled up to tens of thousands of transactions per second with a throughput levels comparable to Visa, right? As compared to the Bitcoin transactions, it is something around 7 to 8 transactions per second. Ethereum today is close to 30 to 40 transactions a second. They're planning to take it to around 1,000 transactions per second very soon. Litecoin again something close to 100 transactions per second. Ripple, as compared to them, is more than 10 times, almost 15 times more faster than what Litecoin can be. With the advent of Lightning Network, Bitcoin will increase its transactions per second, but at this point, Ripple is way ahead of Bitcoin also, right? Now we go to the part where Ripple is criticized the most, and that is a decentralization part of it. So Ripple, as I said, was initially created. The ledger, the XRP ledger, was initially created with a centralized control for obvious reasons, because you are dealing with banking information, you're dealing with the banking transactions, and they need to be reliable. Even the testnet of it needs to be reliable. Now, I have worked with banks for quite a long time, and I know that banks favor security more than anything else, and that is the key criteria. Now, I have given you a link on this presentation as well. I have posted the link on the video. You can check out the decentralization plan of how XRP is going forward. Here are some sites as well wherein you can go forward. This is a blog where you can do a little bit of research itself to give you a heads up or to give you some idea about what Ripple is doing to basically increase the reliability and the decentralization part of it. So Ripple has initially it started with around 25 nodes, of which 5 nodes were completely controlled by the Ripple organization. They basically call it the validator nodes are the which are controlled by the Ripple are basically called the reliable nodes, trusted reliable nodes, right? And the remainder were basically held by third party organizations. Now here, and they basically implement the phase one, wherein 16 more trusted nodes, which are the nodes controlled by the Ripple organization, have been added, and which takes the total amount of nodes to around 2022, which are controlled by the Ripple organization directly. These are reliable nodes, and there are the phase one concluded with 75 nodes altogether, of which 21 were by the Ripple control. The others were by the third party controls. Here is a list of all the validator nodes that the Ripple is running through at this point, that basically hold the Ripple ledger. And as you can see, a lot of them are unverified, a lot of them are not controlled by Ripple. Majority of these nodes that you see are by the are basically financial organizations. These are the ones which are basically controlled by Ripple. At the same time, this is again Ripple. A lot of them are not controlled by Ripple, but they are also financial organizations. They are not common people like you and me. We cannot mine Ripple. For that matter, Ripple does not follow proof of work algorithm. Ripple basically follow a general consensus algorithm. You can again find it out here. I read it in this blog itself. I am posting the blog out here. It's a trust-based alternative to proof of work, right? This is the ledger that Ripple follows. This is the algorithm that the Ripple follows, the Ripple ledger. Now, what has been achieved in phase one, as you can see from the list, these are the list, right? If you go to the sites, most of them are financial institutions that are probably using Ripple or probably would be using Ripple. Now, understand one thing, guys. Ripple is not a coin that I and you are going to use when we go to a mall, or let's say we want to have a coffee and we order coffee and paid by Ripple. No, it's not going to happen. XRP is not going to be used by common public. So you need to understand what is an ecosystem or what is an environment for XRP. The environment exactly is the banking environment, the financial institution environment, and these are the people who will be using Ripple, right? The XRP tokens. And that is the reason it becomes very important that these are the stakeholders for which the network integrity or the network reliability is very important. So they need to ensure. Okay, I'm sorry guys, my software crashed, the recording software. So I was just saying that these are the organizations or these are the parties which require the reliability of the network, and that's the reason these are the ones that take part in the trust-based algorithm that they use. So we need to understand it is not a common public who will be involved in this. These are the people for whom it's the most critical or the most important, the integrity of the network, and that's the reason they take part in it. So it is not that it is centralized, it is more centralized than many other coins. I would agree to that, but gradually they're moving towards decentralization. They pay more attention to the security part of it, the scalability part of it, than the centralization part of it. Now, we need to think as investors. We are not the people who would be using XRP per se, right? Because it's not focused on us. Uh, Moving forward, we will continue to discuss this in this video later on. Do message me, do comment and tell me if you have some other opinion about it, right? So moving forward, as I said, I will discuss only those coins or only those currencies or investment assets that have real world applications or are being used in the world today. If you open CoinMarketCap, you will find thousands, hundreds of coins, tokens, which have fabulous white papers, great teams to talk about something futuristic thing that they're doing, but honestly none of them have, or I would say majority of them don't have any kind of working model, not even an MVP or a prototype today, right? This is one coin which is actually being implemented. It is solving a real world problem. So let's discuss what that problem is. First, the cross border payments and remittances are very painful today, and this is one example that the CEO, Mr. Garlinghouse of Ripple himself give these examples every time. He says that if you want to move, let's say, $1,000 from United States to Great Britain, the best or the easiest way would be to buy a ticket of a flight ticket, take it from New York to London, and you will be able to relocate that money the fastest in that way, which itself is a horrendous approach. It's a horrible approach. You need to understand, in today's environment wherein global commerce is increasing day by day, the cross-border payments or the remittances become very critical. There are people there from Africa, from Asia, who are working in the Western countries or the European countries, and they need to remit their money back to their families. It takes a lot of time, and a major cost is involved. So when you send $100, it is not $100 that actually comes to the family. A lot of money is lost. It could be something varying from $15 to $30 at times, which itself is a huge amount. I will discuss why that is lost as well, right? And so another important thing is the pre-funded accounts. Now let me explain you how things work. If suppose today I want to send money from India to United States, let's say I bank with a bank like HDFC or SBI for that matter, right? And I do not bank with something like a JP Morgan or Bank of America. SBI would have their accounts or their third party trusted party. Now SBI may not be present in United States, right? But let's say JP Morgan is. So SBI will have a settlement partner in JP Morgan. I submit my $100 or my $100 worth rupees INR into SBI. SBI does a settlement with JP Morgan, right? A fee is taken by JP Morgan from SBI. That fee is basically percolated to me, which I have to pay to the SBI, to my Indian bank. Now, JP Morgan will take certain time to ensure that their ledgers are updated, and then the JP Morgan Bank of United States will issue it to the third bank whom I want to send. Let's say I want to send to Bank of Chicago. Right now, SBI does not have any kind of bilateral relationship with the Bank of Chicago. So the intermediate or the intermediate bank is the JP Morgan Bank, and they would have to settle it with the Bank of Chicago. And all these transfers, they basically incur time as well as cost. So there's a lot of friction. Now, to settle these accounts also, a lot of money is kept with JP Morgan or with SBI. So SBI will be keeping a lot of money with JP Morgan for the settlement, because the money can come from United States to India, from India to United States. These are basically called pre-funded accounts. Same way, the Bank of Chicago would have some kind of money kept with JP Morgan, so on and so forth, right? So a lot of these parked monies are basically into the nostro accounts or the pre-funded accounts for settlement. Now, as of 2017 August, this estimate is close to $20 trillion, a little more than $20 trillion. This is a massive amount, right? So as I said, the settlement is helpful for very selected banks. The banks like JP Morgan, which has presence both in India and America. Same way, JP Morgan could be present in Philippines and let's say Brazil. So when there is an intermediary banks, these banks like Citibanks, Bank of America, JP Morgan, these top-notch banks, they would have such kind of bilateral relationship with the local banks. And it is these banks who basically take the benefit. So the remainder of the bank, something like an SBI, something like a Bank of Chicago that I just mentioned in my example, or a bank in Philippines, or the bank in local bank in Brazil, these are the banks that have to pay the fee to such intermediary banks, and these fee are basically passed on to the customer. And that's the reason that the $20 to $30 which I said totally depends on the bilateral relationship of the banks that we are dealing with, right? Now, if let's say a bank chooses to have a bilateral relationship, let's say suddenly SBI decides that they would want to be present in, let's say, a country like Croatia or Estonia. Now, even if they start to create a bilateral relationship, to have an intermediary relationship, they would require anything from 6 to 9 months of an average time, right? So that's a huge amount of time if you need to understand to develop such a bilateral relationship. And that's the reason they go for a third party reliable partner, something like a JP Morgan or Citi, to ease the business or to ease the flow of money, right? Now what Ripple does is try and solve this problem, and to be honest, it is currently solving this problem. Now it has got two major solutions. As I said, the softwares, you may say, the software solution that it has. The first one is called the X current, right? Now the X current is basically used to settle the fiat to fiat transfers. Now let's say if I want to transfer INR from India, which is Indian rupees, to USD, which is the United States dollar, I would be able to solve it. The SBI will be able to solve it directly with the Bank of Chicago, but they would still require, and this settlement, they solve a problem of the time. The time lag is almost negligible. They will be able to solve it, but they will still require some kind of intermediary, or they will require some kind of parked money, right, in the pre-funded accounts, which I just said. So X current has proven to be very, very fast, and as of today, there are 140 companies or 140 financial organizations which are using X current. They have accepted X current as one of the best solution and in this to this problem, and X current does not involve or use XRP at all, right? And I was looking at Brad Garlinghouse interview, and he was basically saying that the first thing that when he approaches to a bank, they basically said that your technology, the blockchain technology, is fantastic, and but they are very, very wary of cryptocurrencies, so XRP per se. And he says that he's more than happy with that. He basically, so I post my job in Bank of America, I did start my own business, and I've been doing my business since last 5 years. So the first thing that we learn when we do business is you need to have your foot first somehow in the company, and that's what he does. He basically offers them X current, which is a proven solution, which is a fantastic solution. And once these companies start using the solution, it's then that Ripple will probably try and push towards them the second solution, which is the Xrapid. Now, Xrapid is a one which uses XRP as digital assets, right? Now, as I said, the global liquidity solution for the cross-border settlement is nothing but that these pre-funded accounts would no longer be required. Why so? Now, let's say today, my SBI, which is State Bank of India, account can have $100 worth of XRP, which I will deposit with them. They will simply transfer those XRP to the Bank of Chicago. We don't require JP Morgan for any kind of mediation in between. The time lapse is negligible. We basically solve this in few seconds, and the asset out there can immediately be sold and converted into USD, right? So this is how Xrapid is solving. So there is no requirement of parked funds or the Nostro Vostro accounts that we discussed earlier. There is no requirement of such funds anymore. That's the reason Xrapid is a very, very powerful, very, very effective tool, and banks are gradually opening up to it. So there are around 8 companies, including big ones like MoneyGram, IDT Corporation, SBI Holding, which is one of the biggest holding or the investment company in Japan, Mercury Financials, Mercury FX, all these companies which deal with cross-border remittances or cross-border payments, they have implemented Xrapid and they are currently using XRP tokens, right? Another important thing for cross-border payments that Xrapid will be required now. We are discussing with stable economies like India and United States, but there are other countries, something like Syria, Iraq, countries like Venezuela, right? These are also important and influential countries, and they are basically having a very unstable economy. Now, what happens is when, let's say, United States Bank keeps a a nostro account in Syria pre-funded. Now they could basically be subjected to very high inflation in Syria. Same thing can go with Venezuela, right? So they are the economies which are unstable. The purchasing power of their dollars is getting devaluated, right? So that is one major concern or one major reason to not have a pre-funded account as well. So these are the solutions that the Xrapid and Xcurrent solve. Xcurrent solves the problem of the time lapse, but it does have a problem of the pre-funded accounts, or it does have a problem of the conversion or the intra-operability of currencies. Xrapid solves that problem altogether, right? I would also want to give you an example of the Japanese domestic settlement. So out of the 140 odd customers for Xcurrent, more than 65 to 70 are the Japanese banks, right? Why so? Because once when Ripple went into Japan, they realized that the domestic settlement process itself is a very time-consuming process. Now, even in India, a lot of banks take anywhere from 1 to 2 days to settle domestic transfers. So such banks found Ripple or the Xcurrent uh, solution to be very, very effective, and that's what they've adopted, right? So now, what is the future prospect of XRP? XRP, as I said, is one of the few coins, one of the few currencies that is solving a real world issue, and it is not a small issue. It is a massive, massive opportunity, a massive issue. We are talking about $20 trillion worth of problem at this point, with virtually no or very less competition, right? Um as you must have seen, if you've tracked Ripple's performance, when I started tracking Ripple at around 7 cents, Ripple did not had many user, or in fact, if I remember correctly, there was not a single user for Xrapid, right? Back then, I did not give much importance to it. I did not did a lot of research on it. Uh, Eventually, you'll see that the first client took 1 year for it. The next client probably took 6 months, 7 months. But once the clients start rolling, now you see Ripple is having a collaboration for Xcurrent almost on a single day basis. And every day you find a new client which is getting attached with or somehow using the Xcurrent product of Ripple. And Xrapid is also gradually increasing. And with companies like MoneyGram and a lot of such important companies getting associated with Xrapid, these things can grow exponentially, right? Uh, Now, as I said, if the pre-funded accounts start replacing Ripple, the velocity of XRP is going to increase as well. The money that is basically kept is kept to solve a lot of problem, right? Now what is going to happen is now transfer is going to take place immediately. Let's say I transfer $100 worth to US. Now US bank or the US company would require again probably to transfer that money to, let's say, Japan. So the velocity basically implies how frequently is a particular currency getting used, or what is the exchange rate, the amount or the quantum that is changing hands, right? So the velocity also will increase and can impact the prices to a great extent. Next important point is that XRP is holding 61% and doing business with top BFSI companies. Brad Garlinghouse itself he's an ex Yahoo employee, and he has done a fabulous job. Now his compensation is also dependent on XRP. Uh, a lot of developers and a lot of top management get paid in XRP. So they also are very keen to grow the value of XRP tokens, right? So we need to understand that. And since they have 61% stake in this project, you need to understand the same concept of proof of stake that Ethereum and a lot of blockchains follow. Now they are the biggest stakeholder in this project, so they would definitely not want it to fail. And when they're dealing with already 140 plus organization, they would want to start selling Xrapid to these organizations as well. This itself can be a threat as well. So let's discuss the threats of XRP itself. Now, if the company chooses to basically dump the coins, they have a 61% stake and they would just start dumping it, or their developers start dumping it, or the management start dumping it, the price of Ripple can crash. Let's face the facts. So we need to understand, but which is very unlikely. I mean, they would have to lose their mind, or they would have to be really, really stupid to do these things, but it is possible. Same way, another important thing that can happen, and then probably you will see that happening with certain banks, would be that these banks will use the X-current technology of Ripple, but they will never start using the XRP as an asset. They would probably have their own cryptocurrencies for the settlement. This is very much possible, and it will happen also with certain prominent country banks, right? What do I mean? So countries like, as I said, India and United States, banks which have presence in India and United States, they possibly can develop some kind of cryptocurrencies for only that particular settlement. Now take a holistic picture. Now let's say I'm a bank, something like a JP Morgan, which is present in Nigeria, which is present in Kenya, which is present in United States, London, Mumbai, which is present in Delhi, which is present in Manila, which is present in Beijing, right? Now, if I have to settle with particular countries, I will be able to do that. But now consider smaller banks, which basically depend on the intermediate bank, like JP Morgan, which I gave in the first example. It doesn't make any sense. So if I'm a big bank who has multiple presences in all over the world, it makes sense for me to have my own cryptocurrencies which assist in settlement. But until and unless when we have a unanimous cryptocurrency, or something like a United States come up with a US dollar equivalent of cryptocurrency, it doesn't make any sense for smaller banks to create cryptocurrencies, or to depend on the third party bank with their own assets or their own cryptocurrencies for their settlement. Now I come to the same original example. Let's say I am a bank like SBI, which is State Bank of India, and I'm dependent on JP Morgan to settle my account with the Bank of Chicago in United States. Either I create a cryptocurrency which Bank of Chicago accepts. Same way, tomorrow I'll be requiring a different cryptocurrency for Bank of Japan. Tomorrow I'll require a different cryptocurrency for Bank of United Kingdom. It doesn't make sense to have so many cryptocurrencies. It's virtually you're replacing your fiat currency INR with some other currency. So it doesn't make sense. Either you need to have a unanimous currency, or I would again have to depend with bigger organization like JP Morgan, which will be again an intermediary, which will use its own asset or its own cryptocurrency to settle the accounts of these smaller banks, right? So again, the smaller bank, the major problem of smaller bank is that they have to depend on JP Morgan today for settlements. So again, this possibility will happen with prominent banks, bigger banks, but again, it is very unlikely to get implemented all over the other banks, the smaller banks particularly, right? There are also some non-crypto companies, companies like Chain, which has recently which had a pilot which was implementing a blockchain for Nasdaq. So Chain is into action, and they're basically trying to implement the blockchain technology with certain banking or the financial companies. So they do have competition in them. Although they're still very much behind of what the Ripple is doing, and the adoption within the banking community for the XRP, but nevertheless the competition is there. So what is my price prediction? So I would again want to say the same thing, that this is not a financial advice. I'm not trying to speculate or predict the price to hike the price or anything close to it. But I would want to just give you my calculated estimate that I personally feel, or I personally think, can be the value of XRP token by the year end, and let's say 5 years to come. So now let's assume, first let's discuss the 5-year prediction. Now let's assume that although the global economy and the global commerce is increasing, so the pre-funded account value by 2017 August was around $20 trillion. In next 5 years, ideally it can increase, but let's assume it doesn't increase and it remains the same. With that kind of asset If Ripple is able to take just 10% of the pre-funded account value, is able to acquire that thing, which is like $2 trillion, right? Which is not far-fetched. In 5 years, that is very much possible. And today, let's assume, I would need to see what is the, okay. So, right. So the market cap is around $44 billion, right? With $2 trillion, it would be something like five times would be 200 billion, and it'll be like 50 times increase. So the estimated price could be something close to $50. That's 50x from today, which some people in crypto world will say it's not that much. But if you ask anyone, for example, someone from banking or a financial community, if you tell me I will be able to reliably give you an increment of 50x in 5 years, the other person will go bonkers and he'll probably sell his house to put investment in your company, right? So again, this is just my calculated approach or my calculated guesswork. The year end, as I said, I'm not a great speculator, but my prediction for the year end XRP price would be something close to its all-time high, which is around $4. Ideally, it should be anywhere between $6 to $10 to be practical. That's what I assume. $6 to $10 where I assume XRP to be. But as I said, this is my opinion. You need to do your own due diligence, your own assessment before investing, right? So that's it, guys. Do give me comments. Do tell me whether you require such detailed videos or do you require brief approach to these videos. Do you require more details? I do have a lot of more facts which I can produce, but I basically summarized them, and the video is getting quite long. So do tell me what do you like. Do comment. Please do subscribe to my channel and do give a thumbs up to the video if you like it. Okay. So take care, guys. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.